Usually when you look at a medical diagnostic tool, there is a certain expectation of absolute precision.
Right, like a clear-cut answer.
Exactly. Like you look at an X-ray of a fractured radius and you see that jagged white line, and it is a totally binary scenario. It's either broken or not broken. It's structural, it's highly visible, and frankly, it's just comforting to have that clarity.
Yeah, we inherently want diagnostics to be perfectly clean and, neatly categorized like that.
But the moment you step into the world of cardiac electrophysiology, that clean structural landscape just completely vanishes.
Oh, totally, it's gone.
You are no longer looking at static bones. You're trying to interpret invisible electrical vectors moving through dynamic three-dimensional tissue in real time.
Which is incredibly complex.
Right. It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters, and that is exactly what we're wading into today. So, welcome to the deep dive. We've pulled from a massive stack of sources today, ranging from the latest electrophysiology research to practical EKG interpretation guidelines, and even some really fascinating new data on artificial intelligence in cardiology.
Yeah, the AI stuff is wild, but our mission today is highly targeted for you. We are doing a complete breakdown of the heart's primary metronome, the Sinoatrial Node, or the SA node.
The CEO of the heart.
Exactly. And assuming you already know the basic anatomy of the conduction system, we're going to dive deep into the specific mechanisms of its intrinsic rate, the exact vector physics an EKG technician relies on to prove a signal actually originated there, and the specific rhythms that emerge when the SA node is actively responding to the nervous system.
It's going to be a great conversation. And a huge shout out to Whole Life Healthcare for bringing this deep dive to you.
Yes, definitely.
Now, going through these electrophysiology journals, I realized I had the SA node totally wrong in my head.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, I used to think of it like this, I don't know, benevolent orchestrator, just peacefully handing out sheet music to the rest of the heart. But it's not.
Not at all.
It's actually executing a biological hostile takeover literally every single second of your life. I mean, the heart has built-in backup generators, right? Other clusters of pacemaker cells just waiting to take over.
Right. But the SA node essentially bullies them into submission just by being faster.
It's crazy.
It is a ruthless system.
Right.
But clinically, we refer to that hostile takeover as overdrive suppression.
Overdrive suppression. Got it.
Yeah, and to really understand how that works, you have to look at the intrinsic rates of the conduction system. So when isolated from all autonomic nervous system inputs, the SA node naturally fires at 60 to 100 beats per minute.
Okay, 60 to 100.
Right. And further down the pathway, the atrioventricular node, or the AV node, has an intrinsic rate of 40 to 60 beats per minute.
It's lower.
Exactly. And then way down in the ventricles, the Purkinje fibers sit at a really sluggish 20 to 40 beats per minute.
So it's basically a high-stakes game of biological musical chairs. And the SA node always pulls the chair out before the AV node or the Purkinje fibers even get a chance to sit down.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
But how exactly does it force them to stay quiet, like physically?
Well, it all comes down to spontaneous diastolic depolarization.
Okay, big words.
Right. What we call phase 4 of the cellular action potential. Basically, all of these pacemaker cells have these things called funny sodium channels.
They're actually called funny channels.
Yeah, they're actually called funny channels. And they constantly leak positively charged sodium ions into the cell. So as sodium leaks in, the resting membrane potential slowly drifts upward toward this critical threshold.
And the moment it hits that threshold?
The cell fires. Boom.
Right, and the SA node simply has the leakiest membranes.
Precisely. Its slope of phase 4 depolarization is the steepest. It reaches that firing threshold long before the AV node or the Purkinje cells can reach theirs.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so when the SA node fires, that electrical wavefront sweeps down and prematurely depolarizes those slower cells. It completely resets their internal timers back to zero.
It just constantly pulls the rug out from under them.
Exactly. So long as the SA node remains the fastest, it suppresses all those subsidiary pacemakers and assumes absolute control of the cardiac cycle.
Which is incredibly elegant, honestly. And, the way it coordinates the top chambers is just as fascinating. Because to get a synchronized atrial contraction, that electrical wavefront doesn't just seep randomly through the tissue.
No, it has a fast track.
Right. It utilizes Bachmann's bundle. It's this highly specialized interatrial tract that rapidly shoots the signal from the right atrium directly over to the left.
Which is vital.
Yeah, it ensures the wavefront washes over both atria almost simultaneously, allowing them to contract as a single coordinated unit.
And capturing that specific coordinated wavefront on a two-dimensional grid is where the diagnostic challenge actually begins for you as a practitioner.
For the EKG tech.
Right. We know the electrical burst is happening, but how do we prove it originated in the SA node just by looking at a standard 12-lead EKG?
Right, because, I mean, any ectopic focus in the atria can generate a signal. You can't just see any random bump on the pink paper and assume the SA node did it.
Exactly.
You have to trace the ink trail of the P wave, the small deflection that represents atrial depolarization. But we are looking for a very specific morphology
A
here.
very specific one.
And that morphology is dictated entirely by vector physics.
Right, so picture the anatomy. The SA node sits superiorly and to the right. Therefore, the mean electrical vector of a normal sinus beat travels inferiorly and to the left, straight toward the apex of the heart.
Moving down and left.
Yes. And leads 1 and 2 in the EKG are positioned specifically to view the heart from that left inferior perspective.
Okay, so the camera's looking up from the bottom left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because the electrical wavefront is advancing directly toward their positive electrodes, a true sinus P wave must register as a positive upright deflection in lead 1 and lead 2.
Which naturally means that if you look from the exact opposite angle, the wave has to be inverted on the paper.
Yep, pure geometry.
Like, lead AVR sits up on the right shoulder, so the entire electrical vector is moving away from it. So if the P wave is upright in AVR, you know immediately that the signal is traveling backwards.
Right, which means it definitely did not start in the SA node.
Wow. Okay.
But beyond just the direction of the vector, we also have to look at the physical dimensions of the waveform. On standard EKG paper, a normal sinus P wave must be less than 2.5 millimeters high.
Which is 0.25 millivolts, right?
Correct. And it has to be less than 0.1 seconds wide.
And those parameters aren't just arbitrary cutoffs either. They represent the actual physical state of the atrial tissue.
Right, they tell a structural story.
Yeah, like if you see a P wave that is taller than 2.5 millimeters, you're looking at increased voltage. And that usually means there is more physical muscle mass generating the electricity.
Exactly. More mass equals a larger electrical dipole. So that points to right atrial enlargement, often from something like cor pulmonale.
Ah, gotcha. And conversely, if the P wave is wider than 0.10 seconds, it tells you the wavefront is taking abnormally long to physically cross the atria,
Right.
which is the classic hallmark of left atrial enlargement or extensive atrial fibrosis.
Yeah, because the tissue is stretched out or scarred, so the conduction velocity slows down. And that literally stretches the waves out on the time axis of the EKG paper.
It's amazing how much you can read into one tiny bump. So we use the P wave to verify the origin and the structural health of the atria.
Right.
But the SA node's job isn't officially complete until we see the intentional delay at the AV node. I'm talking about the PR interval, right? Measured from the start of the P wave to the start of the QRS complex.
Yes, the PR interval. A normal one should be between 0.12 and 0.20 seconds. And honestly, the mechanism behind this delay is just brilliant.
How so?
Well, unlike the rapid sodium channels in the surrounding conduction tissue, the AV node relies primarily on slow-moving calcium channels to achieve its action potential.
So it forces a slowdown.
Exactly. It creates a deliberate biological bottleneck.
It's essentially traffic control. You have to let the intersection clear before you turn the light green for the next lane.
That's a great analogy.
Because by delaying the signal for just a fraction of a second, it ensures the atria have the mechanical time necessary to fully contract and empty their volume into the ventricles.
Which maximizes the preload, or what we call the atrial kick.
Right, it gets all that blood in there before ventricular systole even begins.
Because if that calcium channel delay didn't exist, the top and bottom chambers would just contract simultaneously.
Which sounds disastrous.
It would be. The atria would be squeezing against closed atrioventricular valves, and your cardiac output would absolutely plummet.
Wow.
So when you look at the paper and see that beautiful upright P wave in lead 2, followed by a consistent PR interval of 0.12 to 0.20 seconds, you're witnessing an incredibly complex sequence of ion exchanges functioning completely flawlessly.
It really is a marvel. But we also have to remember the SA node isn't a rigid, inflexible metronome.
No, not at all.
It's highly attuned to autonomic inputs, right? Like the sympathetic nervous system ramps up the leakage of those funny sodium channels, basically acting as the gas pedal.
Yeah.
And the parasympathetic system, specifically vagal tone, hyperpolarizes the cells, acting as the brakes.
Exactly. And this brings us to the particular rhythms that maintain SA node control, but just at altered speeds. Let's start with the gas pedal. Sinus tachycardia.
Okay, the fast one.
Right. The intrinsic rate pushes past 100 beats per minute, typically capping around, say, 150 to 160 in a resting state. But what's crucial for you as a practitioner to remember here is that sinus tachycardia is almost never a primary cardiac arrhythmia.
Really?
Yeah, it is almost always a secondary physiological response. The SA node is simply answering a demand from the body.
Right, so you're actually looking at a systemic issue. Things like hypovolemia, fever, sepsis, pain, anxiety, or even acute hypoxia.
Exactly.
The EKG looks structurally identical to a normal sinus rhythm. I mean, the P wave morphology and the PR interval are completely perfect, but the R interval is just drastically shortened.
Right, just happening faster.
So you don't treat the sinus tachycardia itself, you treat the underlying cause that's driving that sympathetic response.
Exactly. You fix the fever, the rate comes down.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, when the vagus nerve dominates, we see sinus bradycardia.
That it breaks.
The breaks. The rate drops below 60 beats per minute. Now, this can be pathological, sure. Perhaps acute ischemia to the right coronary artery, which supplies the SA node in most patients. Or it could be the effect of nodal blocking agents like beta blockers.
Sure, medication.
But it is also a completely normal variant in healthy populations.
Right, especially in highly conditioned endurance athletes.
Oh, absolutely.
Their resting vagal tone is so incredibly strong that it constantly suppresses the SA node's phase 4 depolarization. Like their baseline might comfortably sit in the 40s.
Yeah, totally normal for them.
Yeah.
Which perfectly sets up perhaps the most fascinating physiological rhythm we see, sinus arrhythmia.
Oh, I love this one.
Right. Here, we see the heart rate constantly fluctuating, speeding up, and slowing down in a cyclical pattern.
Now, wait, I want to push back conceptually here for a second, because in cardiology, the word arrhythmia is almost always synonymous with danger.
Usually, yeah.
We associate irregular rhythms like atrial fibrillation with blood stasis, pooling in the atrial appendages, and, massive stroke risk. So why is respiratory sinus arrhythmia completely benign? Why doesn't this constant fluctuation carry that same stasis risk?
That is an excellent distinction to make. So, in atrial fibrillation, the irregularity is chaotic because multiple ectopic foci are firing randomly, right? The atria are merely fibrillating or quivering.
They aren't actually squeezing.
Exactly. They aren't mechanically contracting, which is what causes the stasis.
Mm-hmm.
But in respiratory sinus arrhythmia, the SA node is still 100% in command. Every single beat is preceded by a coordinated normal P wave.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the atria is fully and effectively contracting every single time, completely emptying their blood volume. There's absolutely no stasis.
So the irregularity is literally just the timing of the perfectly normal beats. It's not a failure of the contraction itself.
Exactly. The irregularity is driven by respiratory vagal gating. When you inspire, breathe in, the decrease in intrathoracic pressure suppresses vagal tone.
Which allows the heart rate to speed up.
Right, and that optimizes gas exchange in the pulmonary capillary beds.
Yeah.
And then when you expire, breathe out, vagal tone returns, and the heart rate slows down to conserve energy.
That is wild.
It's not a pathology at all. It's just an incredibly efficient cardiopulmonary reflex.
But capturing that fluctuating rhythm presents a pretty unique logistical problem on the EKG paper itself.
It really does.
Because the paper moves at a strictly standardized speed, right? 25 millimeters per second. So we usually calculate heart rate by dividing 1,500 by the number of small boxes between two R waves.
The standard math.
Right, which gives you a precise rate for a regular rhythm. But if the distance between the R waves is constantly changing with the patient's breathing, that 1,500 math formula just becomes completely useless.
It's totally out the window. You can't rely on a single RR interval to represent the patient's overall hemodynamic state. This is exactly why the 6-second method is an absolute necessity for irregular rhythms.
How does that work again?
Well, by taking a 6-second strip, which is usually marked out at the top of the EKG paper, you just count the total number of QRS complexes in that window and multiply by 10.
So you are calculating an average.
Exactly. You are mathematically smoothing out the peaks and valleys of that vagal fluctuation to get a true representation of the beats per minute.
It's all about capturing a representative sample. Okay, so we've covered the SA node under normal conditions, under stress, and under heavy vagal influence. But what happens to the EKG when the system actually breaks down?
Right, the failures.
What does it look like when the SA node just fails?
The pathology usually manifests in one of two ways. It's either a failure of automaticity or an exit block. Let's look at sinoatrial block, or SA block, first.
Okay.
In an exit block, the SA node actually reaches its threshold and fires right on schedule. But that microscopic electrical wavefront encounters diseased fibrotic tissue immediately surrounding the node.
So the impulse just gets trapped.
Exactly. It never even reaches the atrial myocardium.
Wow. So on the EKG paper, you'll be tracking a perfectly regular sinus rhythm, and then suddenly an entire cardiac cycle just goes missing.
Just gone.
A dropped P wave, a dropped QRS, a dropped T wave, just a flat isoelectric line. But because it was an exit block, the internal clock of the SA node kept ticking in the background, right?
Right. The node itself is still firing.
So when the next beat finally breaks through that scar tissue, it lands exactly where it was mathematically supposed to be.
Exactly. And that precise timing is the classic hallmark of a second-degree SA block.
Yes.
But when the SA node itself suffers from severe fibrocalciferous degeneration, meaning the pacemaker cells themselves are scarred and calcified, that's when we see sick sinus syndrome.
So the automaticity itself is compromised.
Right. The node becomes entirely erratic, throwing the patient into profound sinus bradycardia, which is then often followed by bursts of atrial tachycardia. It's very chaotic and often accompanied by syncope or really profound dizziness.
Which brings us to the ultimate failsafe. What happens if the SA node stops firing completely?
The worst-case scenario.
Say you have a third-degree SA block, and no impulses are getting out of the right atrium at all. The music in our game of biological musical chairs has completely stopped.
This is where overdrive suppression works in reverse. Because the SA node is no longer continuously resetting the clocks of the subsidiary pacemakers, the AV junction finally gets a chance to reach its own phase 4 depolarization threshold.
So a junctional escape rhythm kicks in to save the patient's life.
Exactly. The AV node takes over.
But because the electrical signal is now originating in the middle of the heart, the conduction pathway is fundamentally altered, right?
Very much so.
I mean, the signal travels normally down the bundle branches into the ventricles, so the EKG tech will still see a perfectly narrow QRS complex, but the rate is going to drop to that intrinsic 40 to 60 beats per minute.
Yep. And the vector physics of the atria are completely flipped. The impulse is now traveling retrogradely.
Leaning backward.
Right, backward and upward from the AV node into the right and left atria.
So if lead 2 is looking from the bottom left and the electrical wavefront is now moving up and away from it.
The P wave in lead 2 must become inverted.
Of course.
Alternatively, because the atria and the ventricles are depolarizing almost simultaneously from that central AV junction, that retrograde P wave might just be entirely buried and hidden within the massive voltage of the QRS complex.
So you wouldn't even see it.
Exactly. The failsafe keeps the cardiac output going, but the diagnostic ink trail is drastically altered.
So bringing this all together for you, the SA node isn't just a simple metronome. It is a highly dominant, aggressively fast cluster of cells that controls the heart through overdrive suppression.
Absolutely.
And you prove it's in charge by finding that perfectly sized, positively deflected P wave in lead 2, indicating a normal inferior left electrical vector. And you verify its healthy interaction with the AV node by confirming a PR interval of 0.12 to more 0.2 seconds.
Beautifully summarized.
Whether it's accelerating due to sympathetic tone or just oscillating with your respiratory cycle, mastering these patterns gives you a really profound window into the systemic health of the patient.
It really does. But, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought from the literature we reviewed today.
Oh, yeah. This is interesting.
We often assume that advanced algorithms and artificial intelligence have completely solved EKG interpretation.
Yeah.
Right? Like the machine does it for us.
Right. You just read the printout at the top.
But a massive recent study analyzing 5,000 EKGs found that computerized automated interpretation misclassified atrial fibrillation a staggering 30% of the time.
30%. That is an enormous clinical blind spot for an algorithm.
It really is. The software routinely confused complex sinus arrhythmias, premature atrial contractions, and even baseline artifact with AFib. And that led to false positives and potentially dangerous, totally unnecessary anticoagulation for patients. The ultimate conclusion of the research was definitive. The subtle nuances of atrial depolarization, vector physics, and SA node behavior still absolutely require the critical eye of a highly trained human overread.
Which is exactly why you need to know the why and the how behind those pink grid lines. I mean, the machine might give you a printed diagnosis at the top of the page, but it is definitely not ready to replace you. You have to be the one who truly understands those diagnostic muddy waters.
Absolutely.
And you can master those critical interpretation skills by purchasing our EKG Survival Pack, which is available right now. This deep dive was brought to you by Whole Life Healthcare, equipping you with the knowledge to make the right call when it matters most. You can catch this deep dive and all our other breakdowns on Spotify and YouTube. Please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep these deep dives coming. Thanks for the support, and keep learning.